teacher because playing with so little pedal is masterful. Usually, we always try to avoid the right foot pedal in Bach because he didn't have one. And because we do, we try to think it can sound with a bigger sound. But the other thing which I noticed is that you were taught also, perhaps also you want, I would like to know if it is what you were taught or what you want, to play the dynamic changes when you play compared to... Were you asked to do that, or did you imagine that?
I imagined it.
Because the score doesn't say much about dynamics. So you have a very good teacher. That's very important. Like parents, teacher, what else? Nothing. It's all you need. The addition sometimes, and it's, yeah. Okay, another thing, were you introduced to the meaning of the Italian concerto being Italian?
I didn't really think of it as Italian, but I thought of it as an orchestral piece, because sometimes, like, the different left-hand parts or the different right-hand parts, you can tell, like, sometimes it sounds like a violin, except it's a piano, and then sometimes, like, in this, it sounds like a soloist.
So then, oh, I'm very impressed. Don't start your doctorate right away. Take time to approach differently. I like very much your opinion because there is something what usually we have with a concerto is an orchestra. And you mentioned clearly that Bach introduces the concerto or the orchestra and the solo in the same instrument, right? But you still told me you don't know why it's Italian. It's because it's fast, slow, fast for the three movements. Whenever the French style coming from the suites or the partitas start with an allemande, which is moderate, and then they go fast with the courante, which is Italian for running, then they go slow with the sarabande, which is a slow dance, comes another story. But anyway, the point of the story is that you have slow, fast, and here you have fast, slow, fast. And another thing is, I went this summer to Bach's Heartland in Leipzig. I went on the jury of the Bach competition. And I was having a blissful moment. I barely washed my hands since. I was allowed to touch manuscripts of Bach and turn the pages without gloves. In the Bach archive. It's fascinating because you have Bach already at your age in your heart, and he belongs to you as he belongs to Cha, my former student, as he belongs to everybody who loves Bach or played Bach. But all of a sudden I was in his home land, in Leipzig. Oh, and touched his manuscripts. I felt like the music comes alive just by touching it from the score. But there's one thing that I like very much in your playing, which I would like you to enhance, is the difference between 16th notes and 8th notes in the articulation. You don't mind if I speak to you seriously, right? You know why I thought you won't? It's because you're a very serious young pianist. You kept your focus to the movement beautifully. Many usually would give up after the second alternation of tutti and solo, again. But you kept at it. So your 8th notes were detached and your 16th notes were connected. And then sometimes you played the 8th notes very legato in the left hand. And I was wondering, for instance, this kind of situation. Ré, fa, ré, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, sol, mi, ré, do, si, la, sol, la, do, fa, mi, ré, do, si, la, si. And I was wondering why. Is it because you don't use the pedal?
I don't know.
Because it would sound sort of dancing.
I think I pedal for legato because I guess it's just, I like the sound of that, but then when you play it like the dancey way, I liked it better. Because I never really thought about not using the pedal in that passage.
There was a pianist who was famous for piano Bach playing. It was Glenn Gould. So true. And Glenn Gould had a system when he played Bach. Every piece was part of all the pieces of Bach. It was almost like playing with an astronomer who sees all the stars in the sky at the same time. And so his system was all his 8th notes were detached, all his 16th notes were aired, and all of them were directed. Which means that when he played, it was not separated, it was connected but breathing. And if ever you listen to recordings of him, you will notice that he growls. Which is what we all think innerly when we need to connect the sounds and we don't use the pedal. So we come down to the point of the story of the Baroque style for which I was invited here today. What is the difference between the Baroque style and the classical style? The classical style, Haydn, Beethoven, Mozart. The Baroque style, Bach, Handel, Scarlatti, and another thousands of the forgotten ones. This piano has ivory keys. You see? Did you try? Come. You play on it and you'll see how it feels under the fingers. They have little grooves in the keys. Do you feel it under the finger?
Yeah.
Because the other one is plastic. And this is ivory.
Well, it has sort of a darker color than the white one.
For elephants. Yeah, it's forbidden now. They don't make it. So that's what I was going to ask you to play. Which piano did Bach play? Steinway? Ivory?
He played harpsichord, right?
Yeah. So you know what the harpsichord is? What is it?
So harpsichord sounds more stringy than a piano, and it's definitely smaller.
So the major difference of the piano, and that's actually why it's called piano, is because in Italian it means soft. And the real name of this instrument is pianoforte, which means literally the instrument that can play soft and loud. But nobody says I'm a fortist. Everybody says I'm a pianist, as if everybody plays soft, which is not true. I play forte, being a pianist. Oh. So we consider that the harpsichord didn't have dynamics forte and piano. And on the harpsichord, the length of sound was shorter than on the forte, on the piano today. So in the slow movement, which you play too, right? What tempo do you take?
I don't know the exact marking, but like on a metronome, but I know it's sort of like slower than walking. So it's sort of like lento, largo, not adagio.
So in Italian, walking is andante, and slower is adagio, which originally in Italian was in two words, ad agio, which meant at ease. So it's like a walk where you take more time. Oh, this rose, and this rose, and you walk in the park. So my teacher told me, smell every second rose. Because if you smell each rose, we'll never end the piece, it'll be too slow. So what is the tempo when you play the beginning of the slow movement? did you stop? So, La Sala, AGA. Just replay from the middle. Yeah, exactly. Very nice. Keep going. Beautiful. That is the right tempo. But I shouldn't say it because I have no right to define it. You said you don't know which metronome marking it is, right? Do you know why?
Because Dr. Washington played with metronome.
Because there was no metronome invention in Bach's time. It is a very important fact that the metronome was marketed in the end of Beethoven's life, 1820s in Vienna, by Mr. Metronome. Mr. Melzel, who invented the metronome, and Beethoven bought the first model that he produced.
That's why it's not, that's why pieces are more specific.
And Bach, not. So, what we know about how the tempo was played on the pieces of Bach's time, the Baroque, is because of the different style of music that it was, like Italian, French, English, different dances. But the exact tempo we don't know. But since we played on a different instrument, it's really a translation. N'est-ce pas, vous comprenez quand je vous parle maintenant en français? Много добре така разбираш, като ти говоря на български, нали? Полика лаката на велиста и никама стамина. I'm sure many people can speak many languages in this room. And the fact is that a translation is really what we call an interpretation. An interpreter is a translator. So we translate the thought of the composer, who's gone a long time ago, through an instrument which he didn't have, for audiences who don't know the difference. Because they hear you just play now. We don't have to demonstrate to them the harpsichord and then the piano. And I noticed in the left hand you don't use the pedal in the introduction. Have you ever tried to play the left hand with two hands? Oh, you did? Were you asked, or are you just exploring by yourself?
I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was probably, like, it was before my teacher heard the piece, and then I just tried it out, and then we did it. And
Curiosity is what makes the world go ahead. Let me think differently outside of the box, and perhaps this star is the one I'm going to research. You're not supposed to search that star. That's the one I want. I think it's exactly what happens. We study seriously, but then we explore. So can you play now the left hand with two hands, but without the pedal?
okay.
But can you repeat not the D in the left hand, and hold it, push down. No, hold it down. But even Bach didn't have three hands.
Yeah.
And so when he wanted to keep the bass line ostinato, which means staying or repeated, to restrike it in order to have it resonate, because on the harpsichord it was not staying a long time. And then have the accompaniment of the thirds, that is the harmony, what we call the chords. And then the aria. I lost my shame since I became a teacher. And I thought when I'll teach I won't sing because it's so stupid when teachers sing. As a student I thought. And it's all I do. Very often piano teachers, to convey, they sing you the thing. Like, oh, sing it, la sa la, or AGA. So I do the same. I fell in the trap. But the truth is that if Bach could enter Bach today, here in this room, he'll probably like very much the fact that the piano can hold 2 full bars of 6/8 in slowest possible tempo and still resonating. But on the harpsichord it was this, and then it was gone. So he has to systematically restrike it to remind us, keep it in mind, this is my ostinato, while I sing the secondary voice, and I go back to it. And that's why most pianists, since they play the left hand with the left hand, the 2 parts of the left hand, they usually use the pedal of the right foot, unlike you. They play this, the pedal, this, and then so hold it. And then they change it after the GB, and then they play it.
Sounds more romantic than Baroque.
So you think Bach was not romantic?
Well,
What is romantic for you
I always think
in music?
I always think of it as dreamy, sort of lyrical, not like very free, and it can be technical, but it's more.
It's like
Yeah.
another one? This?
Yeah. Liszt is very romantic. I don't know. Schumann and Schubert are not that dreamy, but.
Well, I'll tell them when I meet them. It's about time you fix that, because you're not dreaming. But it's interesting because Schumann wrote Traumerei, which means the dream. But I understand that is how you see the world in music, and it's very important. I'm not making fun of what you say. I'm just trying to open your eyes to the fact that Bach, in the Baroque era, was a romantic. Or if not, he wouldn't write this emotionally touching melodic line. If you hear the beginning of the Bach slow movement, I'm sorry, the old master will sit. As if the song continues and never stops. And the accompaniment is very soft. The song never stops, and the accompaniment is very, very distant. Granted, towards the end, it becomes a little bit more. Oh, by the way, did you know that Bach was the first person to use the thumb?
So people never use the phone when they composed?
When they performed. The position for the harpsichord playing used to be like this. And the scales in harpsichord, see, even I get troubled now. They had harpsichords, was fingerings is 1 with 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Or 2, 3, 2, 3. So if you look at paintings by Vermeer, he has a lot of, they call it virginals in Holland, was the harpsichords. Anyway, the ladies who are portrayed, they always have their hands in this position. So in fact, they played sideways. But their harpsichords were tuned only in the key in which they were playing. They couldn't play in another key, it will sound out of tune. So they didn't play very complicated notes fast. They played a few, but in the same key. So they had enough for 4 fingers. But Bach, Oh, Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. He had a total passion for chromatics in Greek colors, chroma. As all of a sudden music became colorized. And he wrote a chromatic fantasy in fugue. And he was the first, according to the legend, to use the thumb in order to play all these notes. And at the harpsichord he had several keyboards, at least two. And sometimes he would use the thumb on the upper keyboard and the bottom keyboard. You have to know that I am a great lover of harpsichords. And I don't believe that the harpsichords don't have dynamic range, because they do. I don't believe that they're to be compared to the piano. But pianists think so. Many years ago, my dear colleague Elizabeth Wright in Bloomington, I asked her, Elizabeth, why are all the harpsichords having inverted colors of the keyboard? Where the white keys are black and the black keys are white. And she told me it's because the piano is inverted. Since the harpsichord came first. So don't tell a harpsichordist that they don't have dynamic range, or length of sound, or they don't have the pedal. They do overstay on some keys. They call it sometimes bleeding when they stay over. They do articulations. They do many things. So the reason I mentioned to you about translation is because the piece not written for piano but played on the piano, we have to translate the thought of the composer. After all, you say Bach was not romantic, but he did fall in love with his two wives. He even wrote a whole book of music for his second wife, Anna Magdalena. I don't think she really adored that gift. She probably preferred the dishwasher. And I say that only because in the context of the time, it was sexist. And believe me, Bach was not equal gender. It's sad, because he couldn't marry any of his daughters. He didn't have a dowry. But all his sons were musicians, and some of them even famous composers. I don't know if you heard about his sons.
I played one of CBE Bach's music.
You know that's an acronym. What is his full name? I'm not sure that his father remembered, but probably he did, because they're 20 some. Carl Philipp Emanuel. And Carl Philipp Emanuel wrote a Versuch, an essay about expressive playing on the keyboard. So they were plenty romantic in their emotion and in their expression. So would you please play more of the slow movement of the Italian concerto of Bach? We will call it andante,
Okay.
or al dente. That's for the pasta when it's stiff. Continue the right hand. was beautiful. Usually when the student plays one hand without the other, stops. Because we're used to play them together. And you managed to, and then you found your way through because you focused very well. That was very nice. I'll tell you a last thing for the moment, is that when I was in Germany this summer, the curator of the Bach archives told us that Bach was famous for being very short-tempered. And supposedly he was extremely unaccepting of mistakes. So I only can imagine how lucky I am that I wasn't his child or his student. When you play ta-ta-dee, you play ta-ta, the 16th note, dotted 8th note. You played. Some of the dotted rhythms you played over dotted, you played like a 30-second.
Okay, so you want me to play it slower?
No, he wants it. I am only a hyphen between him and you, like your teacher. We are here like lawyers on behalf of the estate. But sometimes we misguess, and I must tell you something very moving happened to me a few months ago in Bloomington where I teach. One of our professors in the Department of Early Music is a world-famous lutenist. Nigel North is his name. He gave a beautiful presentation for my seminar, playing 16th century English music on the lute. And when everybody left, and I was just with him when he was putting his instrument back in the case, I asked him, I told him, I said, I feel, Nigel, like I was in Elizabethan England with you today for an hour. And he told me something which I thought was very humble. It wasn't in front of students, so it wasn't like he was demonstrating with attitude. He said, I often thought, he told me, what if I really could go back in time with a machine, and I realized that in fact they don't play at all like I thought they did. And I would be terrified, he said. So that's the whole problem. We assume we know how they played, but we don't have recordings. We have scholars, we have books, we have articles, we have but at the end of it, we guess. And so yes, he notated specifically that the rhythm of the dotted music, rhythmic patterns in the slow movement are 16th notes and 8th notes, never 30 seconds. The 30 seconds are usually for the fast decorative passages, like but when he plays a 16th note in a dotted 8th, in the loop.
Otherwise we have a difference.
Yes! Yes! I don't think you should study doctoral, I think you should teach it. Thank you so much! Congratulations!
Yeah, our next performer is Raha Roshasha, who's playing Allemand from the French suite.
Do you need to adjust? You want to help you? I assumed because the first one was first that she had already adjusted it for her, no? Do you want me to move it lower?
Yes.
Am I going down or up?
No.
Well, because I don't know either.
This is okay.
I just don't want you to start playing with wrists tired from working on this.
Oh, no, it's okay. I'm good, thank you.
You're a pianist, you don't need to touch that. You need to touch the keys. the most divine tone. It's divine school, divine tone. I felt like you're having a soundscape in your imagination. Your ears hear the piece before your fingers touch the keyboard, no? Don't you think so?
Yeah, and I love the song.
You love it.
Yeah.
You do. It was obvious, but it's beautifully obvious. I was imagining, what if she was Bach's daughter? Bach would have been so happy. Your parents are very happy too. And your teacher too. Oh, I'm sorry, but congratulations also, my God, this is the perfect pedaling school. Or rather, non-pedaling Bach school, because usually it's over-pedaled. There is one thing I wanted to ask you in the first place. Do you know what an allemand means?
Yes. It means German.
In?
French.
But Bach didn't know it, because he was German.
So then why is it called allemand?
Because before Bach, the French harpsichordist Couperin, Rambo, with the long wings, they established the so-called suite of dances that we call sometimes partitas or suites. And you have to understand that politically, in the time of Louis XIV, who considered himself the king of his subjects, the Sun King, the French considered therefore that they have the best taste. And they considered that the Germans were peasants who were heavy. And that's why they will make a dance that will celebrate the beginning of the series of dances. It will be the German dance, but in French, une allemande. Because it has to start steady and not fast. Then they had the second movement that was called, the second dance, called the courante. Corrente in Italian, which is a running. Corrente means to run. So that was the Italian dance. The zarabanda was a South American dance that was close to hard rock for the Renaissance. Aha, it became slow because the Queen of Spain, who was the Catholic Queen, Isabella Católica, she decided that it's dangerous. This dance is becoming very bad for the habits of her subjects because they're enjoying dancing this crazy dance, and then they're starting getting crazy with it. So she defined from there on that the dance will become a stately slow dance.
So then did Bach rewrite it to be slower?
Already by Bach's time, the sarabande was a slow dance.
Oh.
But originally the zarabanda comes from Mexico, and it was a very fast dance where the dancers were dancing very, well, in other words, inappropriately. And so it's like, imagine if you take, I don't know, a rap song and you make it to a lullaby. That's exactly what happened. And so it became the slow, stately dance. Then you have a French dance in the French suites that was usually the minuet. Minuet in French means small. Menu means small. It was a small step. And then usually the last dance was the jig, or the jig, which was an Irish dance where men were dancing by jumping very high to impress the ladies, that they had very strong legs. It was a manly dance, the jig, and usually very, very, very lively. So each of these dances had a character. And the opening dance was the German dance, the allemand, the steady, the calm, as the French considered it, heavy. And that's why I was like to imagine poor Bach, who almost all his life long never left the area where he lived.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. If you take a car today between his birth city of Eisenach And Leipzig, you're there in an hour or two. That's basically where he lived most of his life and worked. Unlike his friend Handel, who became a composer of the King of England, who was in fact a German prince, Hanover. Anyway, I'm not going to make history of the royal crowns of the Baroque. But the fact is that the dances have meanings. So allemand means German in French. But I'm still convinced that Bach didn't know, because he would feel offended that the French made fun of the German. Well, there were enough world wars after to prove it. But the point is that at that time it was only a 30-year war, imagine, only during Bach's time. So I think it's still, they all had wars. But music is about way beyond words. It's about the meaning of humanity, way more than the specifics about the title. So I would like you to think about this in 4/4.
So play it faster?
No, I didn't say play faster. I said think it in 4/4. For instance, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You are playing it by the 8th note. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so
it's not because, oh, this teacher likes it fast, this teacher likes it slow. Oh, what do they know? They all don't agree. Now look at the edition. It doesn't say. And then YouTube. Ding, 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 ding. Everybody plays differently. Somebody goes, that's Bach. Somebody goes, or so interpretation, right? But I know one thing is that the tempo is not a speed, it's a direction. It's where you want to go at the end of the phrase. What are you telling people? Are you telling them through the right kind of narration? I would like to tell you how much I would like to bring you in this beautiful land where these things happen and this and that. And you start telling narratively a story. And usually to captivate your audience, it helps to connect the words. And it's only in arias of operas where they stretch forever. I would like to and people lose the meaning because it's just sound, they hear sounds. And so as beautiful as the very slow tempo is, I felt like the mood is beautiful, but I don't know what you're saying. She's speaking something, but what language? When you don't know the meaning of the language, you listen to the sound of the language. But once you hear the phonemes become meanings, then you don't listen to the sound, you listen to the meanings. Like, oh, this is offensive, oh, this is helpful, oh, this is kind. But if you listen to a language you don't know if they're saying something nice or something not. And so I would like to tell you that if Bach wanted to, or we already think, oh, if it's in minor it's sad, if it's in major it's happy. That's something that we think, right? Do you think?
I mean, not always. It can be in a minor and it can sound sad, but it can have a very happy attitude. Very happy. It also kind of changes, with these, at the end of the first part, it ends in a major, but then it goes back to minor.
But very briefly.
Very briefly.
So in fact, even within minor, you can play different pace of tempo. What I wanted to tell you is that if you choose to do a very slow tempo, then you finish by having shorter sentences like, and then, and then, and then. Listen, I would like to tell you to be or not to be. So you capture the attention by the rests or by the shortness of the few words you say. People think about it. To be, oh, to be. Or not to be, oh, not to be. No, it's not. You know what I mean? And if you say to be or not to be, okay, whatever, if you want to do it. And so, in fact, if you play a faster tempo, in fact, you go further in the direction of where you are aiming. That's why I said it's not the tempo about the speed or the sensation of speed, but it's where you want to bring your sentence. I would like you to go at least to the end of the second bar in one single flow. And if not, in a slower tempo, you're obliged to do. How are you? It's also pretty, because I don't say it's wrong, because we don't know how he played it, or they played it, whoever then they were. Just try one last strike of the opening a little faster, even if I understand it's not in your choice today.
Which part? Just the beginning?
Just the beginning, but divinely faster. Thank you for having tried. It's very courageous of yours, because it's out of your boundaries of what you're used to do. I know that. I happened to be a pianist before I was a teacher. But I understand that when you go back to your little more stately tempo, which I find beautiful for the sounds that you produced, you have to still think about the direction of the line. You can speak slowly, but you still don't drop the phrase until you finish it. If not, you speak, and then you say, and then you do, and then that. It's very difficult to play slower and have narrative conviction in the direction of what you want. In other words, it's easier to speak and to convince people by connecting the words than by stretching them. It's a lot to do with rhetoric and persuasion and orators who have the capacity to convey the crowd. If you're in an electoral meeting, you say, "With me, we will win." They speak in 3 words, and everybody is there, yay! They don't start telling them, "But in case we don't, we will, but in doing so we might not." And so I think that you have a very beautiful sound corresponding to your tempo. But I would like you to imagine later that you could play it a little less slow with a different sound that brings your sentence to go a little further. Congratulations! It was beautiful. Edition.
Oh, thank you.
Not single marking. I bet you don't practice on it. No, because I see there's nothing fingering on.
Okay, now we have Julius playing Bach Prelude and Fugue.
Here you have the heart cover. So, you made your book too?
Major book too. It's not good with that.
Yes. See? sol, la, do, si, la, sol, fa, sol. Si, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, la, c'est fa, mi, re, do, re, fa, si, re, mi. Do you know why I know it?
Why is that?
Because my teacher made me every week learn a new one, but not play. She made me copy Monday and Tuesday the score of the Prelude and Fugue of the week. Wednesday and Thursday, she made me copy it from memory, without a keyboard. Friday, Saturday, I had the right to play it on my own writing, which was disastrous. Because in my memory, writing it from memory, I must have made more mistakes. And then after Sunday, the next Monday was the next Prelude and Fugue. So and then at the end, we restarted again the cycle. And I was age 7 to almost 17 when I did several times the circle. So in fact, I can solfege them better than I can play them. And the reason for this is because when you solfege it, you chew it in your mouth. You say it. You don't even sing it. I can do it in English, but slower. Do you use do, re, mi or ECD?
Movable do, re.
Do, re, mi. So your fugue is mi, fa, la, sol, fa, mi.
Well, movable do, so do, re, fa, mi, re, do, the American Kodak system.
Oh, Kodai, who was Hungarian.
Yeah.
So the American system is the Hungarian. Please take the time to adjust your bench. Oh my God, you go fast.
It's good.
Okay. You play the prelude first,
Oh, yes.
which is an obvious fact since prelude means before.
Right into the fugue.
Mm-hmm. Have you played any other from the 48?
C minor book 1.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Ça fa, sol, la, fa, mi, fa, sol, mi, sol. No, it's do, mi, re, mi, do, mi, re, mi, do, mi, re, mi, do, mi, re, mi, do. Okay, so enough of my solfeging. I wanted to ask you, have anybody or yourself noticed something peculiar at the both half and ending of the prelude in this one that you play?
Not really.
It's the only of 48 prelude and fugues where he does that. He inserts the subject of the fugue in the prelude. And he's never done it in the other ones. I can tell you because I've done the other ones since childhood. And I love them even more. So just because I don't like them, but it is a fact. When you do at the end of the first half, no? Well, now you do. But it doesn't change much to the fact that the music is beautiful as it is. How old are you?
18.
And so you play music because you love it.
I do.
But you study it because you love it. And so sometimes too much learning can kill the love for it. Somehow it didn't happen with me, and I'm very thankful that it didn't. But the fact that you know it doesn't mean that you know it better.
Right.
It's just that it's a fact. It's more about scholars who like to say those things. Which is a prelude fugue as the subject of the fugue in the prelude. Image of book 2. Okay. organized mind. You multitask. You play video games. Thank God. Why? Because there is something in the heartland of Bach's writing called polyphony. And try to bring 3 dogs to the supermarket with you, or 3 children with you to Disney, and try to keep track of them. You lose track. And I think that's exactly what happens in the Disney of Bach's multi-voicing polyphony. Do you hear them one after the other, or do you hear them combined
On the keys?
in prelude as well?
I hear them as independent of each other.
So you hear, and then you hear. You don't hear?
Yeah, independent.
So when the decay of the holding one happens, and the other one does a very interesting group of fast notes, don't you turn your attention to the other one?
A little.
Sometimes. And for the fugue, I heard you almost sing it in the beginning. Your voice almost a la Gould came out. Because it's clearly you hear it as a vocal fugue.
I do.
Oh, I lost my perfect pitch. Kyrie eleison, Christ. So earlier we spoke about Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who was the second son of Bach, who was the most successful, since he became composer at the court in Dresden of the King of Prussia. And he wrote to his dad, "Please, Dad, don't come to the court and play your fugues." The taste has changed, he writes to him. Today is ballet and opera, not your austere fugues. And Bach, father, arrives at the court, and the king himself on the flute demonstrates a subject that he would like him to improvise a 6-voice fugue. And Bach can't, because he told him, "I have to write it, I cannot improvise it, 6 voices is too many." And the king dismissed him, saying, "Oh, the old Bach is finished. I have the young one with me, he's my court composer, CPE. He didn't call him CPE, Carl Philipp Emanuel. It's only in America we call them by acronyms, JC, JS, CPE. It's always Johann something. Johann Sebastian, Johann Christian, Johann Christoph. And the reason I mention this is because the polyphonic hearing was something inherited from the Renaissance for the motets which were sung. And the more the capacity to play quick virtuosic on the harpsichord developed with the thumb, and the more the fugues became instrumental. Like, try to sing that, right? It's impossible. But really not. So the long values, vowels, book 1 and 5 voices, or yours. Since you sing so beautifully, can you try to play for us the fugue opening, please, with the bass in the left hand? But when the tenor comes in, can you sing it?
Sure.
But really sing it,
Alright.
not play it.
Okay.
Let's try. Can you do it? I mean, after the first subject is finished. I think it's very important because if you can sing it or say it, chew it, or something other than the fingers only, you have another way of expressing that other voice. And you naturally did it in the beginning when you sang with the fingers. So I felt that you wanted to show us this is a vocal fugue. That is one way to practice it. The other way to practice, especially for the prelude, because we always think that the preludes are not polyphonic, but in fact most of them are. And in this prelude you have three voices. Now, the decay of the harpsichord, even if we want to not consider that Bach considered it short, nevertheless existed. It disappeared. And there is something that is very important to integrate in the way you present polyphonic music of Bach on the keyboard. Since you don't have three viols or three violins or three trumpets or three something, you only have a piano. So if you want to bring out the top voice more, you have to play this much less. And therefore you play much lesser the other two. It's like you go behind the curtain, and we only have the first one speak outside. But if you try to combine them, then you hear the hidden melody, the combined melody, the melody of the melody is all in one. And because of the harpsichord, and because of the fact that Bach wrote it with long vowels, same thing, vowels, that have often slurs, we see it when we read it on the score, but we don't hear it when we play it. I think that, and that's something that I had to accept after having denied it for most of my life, that the composers like him also thought vertical. And for me to say that today, it's a big defeat. Because I was thinking if the composers, because I hear music constantly, or I try to hear it since I was taught like that, by layers. And I think that ultimately none of us really hear the layers. At some point we hear the combination. It's like a chef who makes something special. And they combine tastes. And it comes in your palate and the taste buds, it's very good. And the very good means the combination tastes very good. Even if the very, very skillful tasters would say, oh, it has more of this on the ingredient, not enough of that ingredient. They can even measure them just by tasting them to criticize if the sauce is exactly done in the right proportions. I don't think it's wrong. The only way you can really make sure that you hear the three voices layered is if you don't play so slow. The pianists are all in denial that the instrument has a decay. It's a percussive instrument. As soon as you hit it, you only hear the resonance of it. You don't hear the continuation. So if you play, but then it's no more peaceful. The pacing, especially the first note. He doesn't restrike it. that. Now, of course, the reason I think for which he wrote long values that can't be held on a harpsichord but musically have to be held is because he was in fact not a harpsichordist. Bravo! He was an organist. And the organ has constant held sounds for everything. Well, it's all dependent of his favorite person who was in the back of the organ, who was in charge of putting up the bellows, which was a very skillful job that was lost after electricity was invented. Because the person who was lifting the bellows in the organ in the, before electricity, this person had to know what kind of texture you'll play on the organ. So if he knew that Bach will play a tutti in the, with all the stops on and the bellows go fast down, he has to be ready to pull them faster. And if he knows he'll play a trio, which is with less stops, then he's slower. So in other words, in any case, mechanical or electric, the length of sound in Bach whole notes was organ. And so he played on the organ every day, and then at home on the harpsichord, he continued to play the organ. And I think that he wrote through the harpsichord, not for the harpsichord. Just like Beethoven wrote sonatas through the piano as string quartets, not for piano. And I think composers don't like to be told limitations. Oh, I can imagine things nobody else can hear. I hear them, you know. And I think that is very important. When I was teaching the polyphony on the keyboard for Bach to a student by playing one voice and singing the other, when she came back the week after, she told me, "Professor, ignorance was bliss. Now that I can hear all the voices, I cannot play it anymore because it confuses me. I'm too much aware of stuff going on." Because in fact, we isolate in our mind one that we follow and the others that accompany. They're not really equal. And once we are aware of their whereabouts constantly, it becomes mind-boggling. No wonder Bach couldn't improvise a 6-voice fugue, excuse me. If he was a 5-voice fugue, probably he could. I don't know many people who improvise a 3-voice fugue even today. But of course, since CPE already we know that it's passé to write fugues. This austere old music. And the reason for which I ask you about this, because I think of your interpretation. You did beautiful dynamic ranges in the fugue. Like mountains, valleys, rivers, bridge. Beautiful sound landscape. So I think you imagine the fugue also as a, in a way it's also a narrative storytelling, no?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's certainly a chorale in my mind. You know, what they're singing.
Like, and here, at least you hear them when they sing. In you I believe, my Savior, and so you understand the meaning of the music is connected to each syllable. But when you play this, is words without, sounds without syllables, right? But because it's in E major, do you think it's hopeful?
I think it's very reflective.
Reflective. Well, again, I ask you if it was
certainly more somber.
somber. I think this is what, when earlier she said it's romantic. We associate a lot with the 19th century music the mode of minor with somber or sad, and major with happy or hopeful. But it's true also, as she said, that sometimes it's sad, but with its own hope inside. One day I was so much bothered for decades of not knowing the answer to it, that I decided to play for myself all of the 48 in the opposite mode. Just to prove myself if they can be convincing me. Like, and do I hear it differently because of what I have heard since? Because I've heard in Wagner, and I've heard in Scriabin, and I've heard in Chopin, I've heard Stravinsky, and I've heard Ligeti. But they didn't. And so the notion of major, minor, and probably was not as much that. And I think that in a way, yes, it's more reflective than hopeful. So can I ask you why you play ritenuto at the end of the fugue?
Well, I mean, coming from a choral background, certainly when all the voices are singing together, it lends itself to more grandeur.
It's like, ladies and gentlemen, Johann Sebastian Bach didn't write a coda. So let me help him. Let me make it more conclusive, right? There is one thing that I teach my students, and I will die believing it, is that I don't ritenuto the ends of Bach pieces. I think Bach is like a tap. You open, the water flows, and you close the tap, but the water continues to flow in the pipes. It just doesn't flow there, but it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. For me, ending a Bach piece is almost like death. I think it's not ending and it's not starting. It's just sort of, you pick it where it was, like a tramway still going, the streetcar. You just hop on it, you come out of it, and it continues. And it goes to the next generation, and this text was before us, the text will be after us, and other people will see it differently, and it continues. And some people dreamed on it, some people cried on it, some people enjoyed it, but it goes on. For me, the ritenuto at the end makes it appear like as if we have to give it a conclusion. Now, even if it's grand, Beethoven onwards, we have those very, it's ending, it's ending, it's ended, no, it's ending, you know, like. Bach almost never has a conclusive ending. He always finishes either on the middle of the bar, upbeat, or according to the symmetry of the structures, if you have the first and second half. And we feel, I think, going backwards into our understanding that we hear this Baroque music, but still we need this kind of classical romantic era conclusive ending. I don't ask you to agree with me, and you're right not to. But just think about it. It's like food for thought. Put it on the side of the burner, and one day you might think, let me try. After I tried for so many years, let me try to finish without the ritenuto and see how can I be convincing and grand without to be slow. Same for the prelude. It's not something that you use like a switch of the light, and off and on, and okay, that's right, that's wrong. It's food for thought. But I appreciated so much what you did. It was so musical. Congratulations.
And our last performer is Sam Zia, who's also playing a prelude and fugue.
I noticed your inquisitive eyes earlier already. In French we call it les yeux engageants. Engaging eyes, like you have a gaze that looks. You have perfect pitch? You don't think so? But you play President Fuchs.
Yes.
In which key?
D major.
D?
D major.
Good one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't change since I was a child. Just in case it's 2.1. Like I can never upload anything new on my phone because I don't have the latest, whatever it is, update. But it's reassuring that Bach remains the old one. But my teacher, when I was in Boulanger, used to tell me, you'll see when you grow up, Bach is a very good companion for the travel through life. And I find it to be very true. He reveals itself differently. But when young people like you arrive and you tell me you know the D major, and I'm like, is it the same? It sounds like a joke, humorous, but in a way, it's different because it's through you. So please give us your version. Adjustment? Lower or higher? Lower, 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 lower. And you play the prelude too, right?
Yes.
Oh, good. Bach's music, I always think, what does it mean to me? Solace, consolation, plenitude, fulfillment, elevation, perhaps all of the above. Earlier when I mentioned that I don't think Bach ends, because if he ends his death, it meant to say that there is something that I think really Bach didn't invent but mastered the best, is the perpetuity. He almost invented the system how to play perpetual motion on the keyboard. If you take your prelude, the right hand plays non-stop 16th notes. I would like to tell you this, and I would like to tell you this, and I would like to tell you this, and this, and this, and this, and that. Really, in the dominant. Oh, the second degree was nice. But did you see it's raining in the subdominant? It's like these people are talking to each other so fast, so many words. I would be more comfortable if it was. Oh yeah. I take the time to understand, to absorb, to process. And so what I notice is that he writes by 4 16th notes on each beat, but the pattern starts on the second 16th note of each 4 towards the first of the next 4. Tutti for 1, 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 tutti for 1. So he doesn't start on 1. He starts with an upbeat. He starts with the jumping off. Tutti for 1, and he gets on the second beat, the third beat on the downbeat. He doesn't do. Granted, in my presentation I'm skewed because I'm trying to make it ugly. Because I want to suggest that if he had written the patterns on the beat, he would be heavy. But because he starts after the beat, every time you play the bass note on the beat, the right hand is off the 16th note. Tutti for 1, 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 tutti for 1. When you play Bach with another instrument, for instance, oboe, flute, voice, who need to breathe, or string players who need to change bow, they always say, where can I breathe? There's no place to breathe. And sometimes it's written for voice, not sung by someone, it's written like an aria, there is no breathing space. As if he ignored even the necessity to. And so very often on the piano we tend to play the fingers because we hear it by the fingers. If I close the keyboard and I play, since you know the piece, I bet you hear the notes. But if you don't know the piece, you hear pata 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 like a tap dance. No pitch. It's all single pitch, right? And very often the muscular memory to the tip of the fingers, the cushion tips of the keys. On the piano we hear all this individual pushing of the keys. And I would like to think that when we play this 2 3 4 1 instead of 1 2 3 4, we have to place a little nano comma between the first and the second of the 4 16th notes. 2 3 4 1, 2 3 4 1, 2 3 4 1, 2 3 4 1. If we do too much staccato, it sounds like a hiccup. But if we connect them, then we obtain the perpetual motion. And if we do air them, we decide to make an interpretation where the right hand becomes 2 parts, two voices. I'm going to say voice and parts, and I say ports. 2 parts, 2 voices. And then it's like a ping pong, and you and me and you have you seen the last movie? Oh yes, I like it. Oh, did you see it? Oh yes, I like it. Oh yes, oh yes. So it gives the impression that while we converse, we almost over speak on top of each other.
Right.
And when we play it on the piano, very often we think it's a continuous group of notes. Ta 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 ta. So you played it very seriously and very well organized. I wanted to ask you, are you afraid of the fugue?
I think so.
Because you seem all of a sudden your beautifully smiley face in the prelude. And then afterwards it's okay. Is it because of the opening of the subject with 8:30 seconds?
Well, yeah, I want to make sure I get the tempo right. It's very rhythmic.
And if not, it glues and it stays all connected, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but it really glues. But nobody would play staccato, right?
What did it say?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I know. And so therefore, what is the gesture that you think comes out of the 8:30 seconds? Which is the note that prevails? Is it the D?
The D and then the last E. We're getting.
But the last B is already the next
Yeah,
beat.
it's on the next beat.
So therefore, the first beat is a long D.
Yeah.
So the gesture is an ascending sixth melodically. Ta, 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 ti. And I think that in order to prepare that leap of the sixth, because the rest of the subject is step motion, like small steps. Ta, di, ta, ta, di, ta, di. And I think the 30 seconds are there to prepare, energize
Yeah.
that leap, which is in fact a 30-second in rhythm leap. So you have the longest, furthest leap to do this interval of a sixth in the shortest value possible.
Yeah.
And when if it was in 8 not dotted to 16, it would be. But if he doesn't double dot the others,
Yeah.
did you ask him why? I mean, Johann, all these fugues and not one with all double dotted? That's probably what my colleague said. What if I return now with the time machine and I hear Bach playing it all double dotted? I spent my life believing no ritenuto, no double dotted, and in fact I was wrong. The reason for which these things happen is because the notation sometimes betrays or is lost in translation through time periods. And very often when they were playing, so we were told, dotted rhythms against 30 seconds, they were double dotting them anyway, but they didn't notate it. So very, very likely Bach played. And if he didn't, he should have. Because at some point, since we cannot talk to constantly the ghosts of the composer, since I spent my life sitting next to a student trying to guess what the dead composer had in mind. Because the notation, the edition, the publications, the articles, the YouTube symphony, what can I say? YouTube University give us the diversity of options, but at the end of it we're left with even more questions. So at some point you have to decide, okay, now I will do it all double dotted. And fiddle-dee-dee if I'm wrong. One day I'll change. Perhaps I'll rethink it, but I think you can try. Do you want to try once that you double dotted? Triple dotted? Or as she said, it will be grace note. It's true that at some point it becomes that. Can you try it? The reason for that is that he can say, but I played for this weird guy who came from somewhere, who taught me to double dot, and I want to believe it. And rightfully a teacher and I was a teacher, if I'm the teacher of yours, I'll say, look at the score. It doesn't say that. So we enter in a very interesting situation where we want to understand the intent. But in order to be sure that you will pass your audition, your jury, your exam, you'll play single dot. And if one day you become a scholar, you can play triple dot if you want, and then people will say, wow, very interesting. But if you play today triple dot, they'll say it's wrong. So I think it's like everything. When you research, you understand more, and then you start being more free with the text, but with an understanding. That's why we, teachers, we give you the rules, which are given by the book, and through the book we teach you, and then we say that's what Bach wanted. Regardless, if he or didn't. Because at some point, I think it's very important to play your conviction. And you'll build it slowly by what you're told and taught. It doesn't come overnight. But this sense of plenitude, of meaning, that's what I meant about Bach, the solace. That's why it's a good companion for a trip of life, because sometimes the answers come later, but you have to keep asking yourself. For instance, I have a very interesting question for you.
Yeah.
On which beat does the fugue start?
This
Yes. Well, since we work on this today, but we can work on the 48 others. I think the audience will be here for breakfast.
Well, the D starts on the first beat. The first D starts on the first beat.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm quite sure.
In every edition. Let us search.
No, it starts on the second beat.
Oh, it does sound on the second beat. I thought you said you started on the first. It's not for the pleasure to have this ridiculous system of the old person knowing and I told you so. It's not. It's just because I wanted to tell you that I don't understand still till today, why do composers start on the second beat when there is no downbeat? Once you've played the first voice and you finish, and you say a second enters, it's clear it's a second beat. But how do you know it in the beginning? When it's silence anyway, there is silence before you start. The orchestra conductors, you see them do. And then you hear the orchestra. Because the beat eighth note rest that is not played. That rest that is intense, but it's a rest. Intense but rest. And so the reason for this question was, if you really want to give the listener the reading of your interpretation through your playing, other than telling them, 1! Then they know you start on 2, right? But you're not going to scream 1 to the audience. I think you have to give a bigger accent, impulse, on the B, which is your first next beat, which is the third beat, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't give an accent to the first D, but you start, you should start the first note of the subject without pushing down the key very loud.
Okay.
Start the finger on the key. The D is fourth finger, right?
Yes.
Start it on the key. Don't play from above and drop. Just start in it. You start by doing your wrist down. Just start without momentum. And then on the B, with the thumb, jolt the wrist up. So you do. So you emphasize that famous leap of the sixth.
Yeah.
See why teachers get crazy? I was just getting totally crazy about a leap of the sixth. What's with that? You could have done a leap of the octave. That was even more dramatic, which actually he does. When you do, oops, I missed it, sorry. So in other words, if you bring out that B with an accent and the jolt of the wrist, you do. In an exaggerated way, in my example, because always examples of teachers are exaggerations to prove a point, but nevertheless, it's to show that you bring the attention of your listeners to the note that you want them to listen to. So if you give them and this, and this, and this, and this, at some point they don't know which one is what. They go, okay, he started on 1, 2, 3, 4. Beethoven does that so often. Do you know Beethoven?
Yeah, very good.
It's a good thing because he played, that we don't know, but he composed. You see, I get caught in my own rhetoric. The sonata that everybody plays, 109, which starts so soothingly calm. And nobody suspects, if they don't know the score, that it starts on the downbeat, because it doesn't. It starts on the upbeat. 4, 1, 2, 3. But everybody usually starts. And Beethoven purposely wrote it so that you don't know if he starts on a downbeat or an upbeat. You're just in a no beat. You're in a no zone. You're in a suspended situation. It's almost like there's no downbeat, there's no upbeat. I'm just there. It's a cloud. I'm in suspension. I'm there. I don't need the beat. In a way, the beat is made for organizing orchestra musicians to play together. You know, like slices of cakes. 4, 2, 3, 4, shlum, 2, 3, 4, shlum. But when you're alone, you can just say, okay. Imagine if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Forever expansion, forever exponentially expanding. Because it has sense of plenitude. It's not, I mean, the notation with the bars and the in a way, is belittling the thought. And when you play it, thankfully the listeners don't hear the bars. What I thought is that because Bach is a pedagogue, he was a teacher more than a composer, at least in his eyes. He constantly wrote exercises for his students, like the inventions. I don't know if you played any?
Yeah.
There is a beautiful book about Bach's time, in his time, that he composed the inventions not for the students to play them for him, but for them to compose or improvise their own two-voice inventions. That's why he called them inventio, imagine. Supposedly he was playing one voice, and they were playing the other one. They're doing contrapoint with each other, improvising. The lost ark, and Atlantis. Today we don't improvise in real time because we're not supposed to be composers. We are recitants, urtextians. Do you know urtext? We are urtextians. We play the text, we recite the text. Of course, we need a certain organization of the text, so the bar lines are there, but in fact, it's a strange thing because we need them for the structure, but we want to abolish them for the expression. And it gives us the sense of, oh my God, this structure, this architecture almost holds itself in the air. How does it hold? And when you see how it was built, you realize how it was hold. But the idea that the ballet dancers, you think, oh my God, they fly. And when you go to see them practice, you see they bleed and it's hurtful and they're like, the attraction is terrible. They don't have at all the flying feeling, but they give the illusion. And I think very often we have this feeling in this music that it's just constantly exponentially expands. And why? Because a fugue starts with one single cell, which develops by repeating itself with the other voices. Have you heard of cloning? As soon as you talk to science to a young person, immediately they smile. When people talk to me about cloning, in my generation used to say, the what? But you say, yes. So you know what I mean.
I do.
A single cell can be copied and multiplied. That's what a fugue is. You take a cell, and then this cell brings this one, which becomes, and all of them become, the single voice becomes all the voices. Whenever in the sonata form, like Haydn and Beethoven, they have a first and second theme that are different in characters, and then they become equal, alike at the end. So you have mammal reproduction, if you want. But yeah, this is single cell reproduction. And I think Bach was one of the greatest fugue composers. After Bach, it's notorious that nobody wrote a good fugue. Like Beethoven. But they all wrote fugues after Bach in their pieces. Brahms in the piano quintet, Beethoven in his sonatas, in everything. Everybody wanted to write a fugue after Bach, and I like to call it the mich auch moment, which actually means me too. I can also write a fugue. Liszt in his sonata writes it as a development. So the fugue becomes the virtuosity of the polyphony, virtuosity of fingers in Romantic era, but with a fugue. And Barber sonata in a fugue. But what I think makes a Bach fugue sets apart from all the other fugues written after him, if you look at a fish tank with a lot of small fishes, they never hit each other. Have you gone to the aquarium to see all these little tiny fishes in the fish tank? They go, you have these crowds of fishes, and they all beautifully don't collide. They just, all Bach voices always so smoothly, beautifully, beautifully in the sense of without to collide, interact. And every time you hear a fugue, especially in Beethoven sonatas, it's beautiful because they collide. Like so Beethoven uses the fugue as a sense of I will prevail against the odds. It's a fight of humanity, of human against. Bach is just like constantly the voices are there, organized as if divinely well, naturally flowing. Well, obviously they all wrote fugues, but I still think that Bach fugues, well, that's my opinion, Bach fugues are the only fugues. Even in my lack of humility, I committed my own fugues. Mine collide a lot too. But I appreciated you playing this so organized in such a well hearing way. You have a very good voice inside you, and you bring it out when you play. I liked your fugue very much. Congratulations!